Hi, everyone. We're going to give people just a couple of minutes to get, um, on the YouTube line. So just give us a couple of minutes and we'll be back. Yeah, again, apparently we have 123 people watching right now. So we're getting pretty ready to get going. Just give me another 30 seconds or so and we'll kick it off. Let me do a sound check really quickly. Christy, could you let me know if you could hear me or you could hear the microphones are working well or not?
Yeah, yours sounds really clear on this side.
Hi, Christy, can you hear me?
Yep, yours sounds good too, Theresa.
Great, thanks.
No problem.
Okay, well, good. Why don't we get started then? First of all, let me just say welcome to everyone who took the time to participate in this YouTube/Zoom call. As I just want to begin by saying that I think you know the concept here that we, one, try to schedule these town halls to give you an opportunity to ask all the questions that you've been anxious about. Also to give you a couple of announcements along the way. I'll just give you a sense for what we're going to talk about today. I'll speak a little bit about the United Way campaign and how we plan to do it this year. Theresa will speak a little bit about our contracts and recompetitions. I'll finish my formal conversation around the racial equity, inclusion, and justice work that we are doing at the agency. And then I'll give a couple of announcements about our events. We normally have two big events in the fall. And so I want to tell you how we plan to do those. So that's essentially the formal part of the conversation. And then we will open it. I have a bunch of questions that have already been submitted to Christy. And so I'll try to go down the line. I think they are broad and they address lots of different things that I think you are wondering about. Once we're done with all of that and you've had the opportunity to ask more questions, we will end this first part of the town hall and then we will speak specifically to Southeast. Again, if you remember, our goal is to visit virtually with each center every time that we do this. So last time, as you remember, we were, I believe we were at Calumet and spoke with Calumet after the town hall. This time, as I just said, it's at Southeast, and next time it'll be at another center. And so we're going to try to do that and just keep going around and around and around until we hit every center and then we do them all again. So that's what you could expect for today. So let me begin. First of all, welcome again, and thanks for joining us. Let me just give you a simple word of gratitude to you for all that you have done during this unprecedented time in our country, in our state, in our city. It's a challenging time, as you know, not only because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but, and that's a generational issue, as you know, but also because people are enduring with the many effects of the pandemic. Not the least of them is the financial effects of the pandemic that have been difficult for our country, again, our state and our city, and quite frankly, our communities. And they have especially hit hard in the communities that we serve. We tend not to serve the affluent and the wealthy. We tend to serve those who have less means or those who have been ignored in our society. And so whether it's in Chicago or on the collar counties, we serve those who need us most. I always like to say we are inconveniently located in the places that most need us. And certainly the people that live in these communities need us now more than ever. And they have suffered disproportionately, both because of the pandemic and because of the financial ramifications that happened as a result of the pandemic, that are ongoing as a result of the pandemic. So first of all, let me just say that, and to thank you for all that you've done on behalf of MFS. We are asking you, thanking you first and foremost, but asking you to do more. I know we are in a relatively privileged situation where everybody kept their jobs. And so that is a bit of a luxury, as you know, from your friends and your family members. Not everybody has been as fortunate as we have to keep our jobs and to, quite frankly, be thinking about the future in positive ways. People are suffering from anxiety, and I'm not saying we're not. We are also anxious. We're also tired of this pandemic. We also want to get out. We also want to enjoy live interaction with the people that we love. But having said all that, we have our jobs, and we have interaction with colleagues digitally, virtually, and in some cases, we are still doing a lot of live service and interaction. So I know we're asking you to do more. If you're doing virtual telehealth, telemental health, teletherapy, we're asking you to do more. We're asking you to meet your hours, meet your productivity. As if we plan on succeeding in the future, we need you to do your part again. And that's not only for people who are providing therapy, that's for all of us. We need to work as best we can, as hard as we can, and continue to be the beacon of hope that this organization has been for over 160 years. So that's the first part of the message. And I know there'll be questions, and there are questions about that we will get to. The second thing I wanted to address is, there's been some, I know it's difficult to say, but there's been some silver linings along the way. Among them, and I'll speak personally because I know it's not the same thing for everyone. It's been an opportunity to reconnect with my family in ways that I hadn't before. I have no choice but to be with my family almost 24/7. Sometimes it's a pleasure to go to the office and get away a little bit, but I've been able to reconnect in different ways with my family. And as many of you know, I have sick ones at home as well. And it's been, a silver lining that I've been able to take care of that person. There are other silver linings for many of us. Again, not equally distributed these silver linings, but some of us have been able to read and meditate and do yoga. Not me, I don't count myself among those, but I know that many of you have. And I know many of you, and I've asked you to exercise and to consider the pies, the physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual well-being that we all need to get through this pandemic. And so I continue to ask you to consider those things and do what you can. You don't have to exercise for an hour. 10 minutes might be enough to start. You don't have to do yoga for half an hour. Maybe 10 minutes is enough to start. You don't have to be spiritually active for every single day, but you could find ways to do that. And again, so I just encourage you to do that. There have been some silver linings along the way. Among them for me is the support that we've received from our board. And I think those of you who have interacted with our board, including with the panel presentation that we had last month, I hope you were able to pick up on their genuine interest in not only MFS, but in the people that we serve and in the people that work at MFS, including all of us. They've also supported us with their financial resources. The board has not stopped giving the amounts that they were giving in the past. In fact, some of them have leaned in and given a little bit more because they know we are not bringing in the same kind of money from the public grants. So for me, the silver lining is really getting to know the board better. I meet with the board probably more than I ever had. And that's, I'll count that a silver lining and a mixed blessing for me. And again, the community boards have also leaned in, and the executive directors have done a great job of nurturing those relationships. So that's the first thing that I wanted to share with you. I'm going to look at my agenda here for a second. That we're gearing up for the United Way campaign. And as I mentioned before, we do this every year. For those of you who are new to MFS, maybe you haven't been part of a United Way campaign, but this is the time of year where we ask you to dig even deeper into your own pockets and give what you can. It could be that it's $1 a paycheck. It could be that it's just a one-time gift of $10 to the United Way. It could be that you do more every paycheck. Whatever is possible for you, that's what we're asking for. We're not asking you to stretch beyond your means. Please understand that's not something I want you to do or anybody wants you to do. We want you to do what you think is right and what you think you can. United Way has been a strong partner of Metropolitan. I like to say that whatever is good for the United Way tends to be good for Metropolitan. The problem with that statement is that the United Way hasn't been doing so well over the last decade or so. And so the more they lose, the less money they have, the less money they have given to us. Nevertheless, we are still the agency that receives the most money from the United Way. And it's less than half of what it was when Richard Jones was CEO, but it's still, we're still the agency that gets their biggest contribution. We get nearly $50 back for every dollar that we give. So if I donate $1 to the United Way, MFS would get almost $50 back. So every single dollar that you give really truly helps us support not only the programs that are so valuable, but it helps support your own salary. So that is probably the biggest selling point that I could tell you about the United Way. You know, they do great work and they support other great nonprofits. But the fact that for every dollar that we give them, they give us almost 50 back so that we can support you. I don't know what stronger statement I can make than that. We will have Corinne Henry. I was thinking of Colleen Jones for a second. I'm not sure why, but Corinne Henry is going to be our volunteer campaign coordinator again this year. She will try to set up as many activities, as fun activities as possible. We obviously can't have the bake sales and the kind of crazy Olympics that we used to have, or the jeans day or all that stuff, but we'll find other ways to engage you. So that's the first thing. And I know there will be questions about this a little bit later, and we will get to all of them, I promise. The next thing I want to just turn this next couple of items over to our wonderful COO, Theresa Nihill, and she'll talk about some new grants and talk about some potentially new grants on the horizon. So Theresa, it's going over to you.
Okay, great, thanks. Hi, everybody. It's kind of odd to talk to a black screen. Sometimes when we do the town halls, we at least see the folks in the center, and all I'm seeing is Rick, which is lovely to look at, but missing seeing all of you. So hi, happy Friday. I did want to fill you in on a couple of new things. So even with the pandemic, we are getting opportunities for growth and for some new programming, which is really exciting. So at our North Center, we were selected as one of the organizations to get a contact tracing grant from the city, we are going to be hiring, I think it's up to 30 new employees that it's actually part of a workforce development program. So we'll be training them through our workforce training and then bringing them on to do contact tracing related to COVID. So that's something really exciting for us. It's a way both to give back and help deal with this, as my daughter, who has autism, says every day to me, this stupid virus. It'll be a way to do that and also help some folks really improve their job skills and make a livable wage. In addition, we were also awarded a Chicago Connect grant. So that's what you've seen the mayor talking about quite a bit, that she wants to make sure that every CPS child is connected to internet and has a computer or tablet at home. So we, through our community schools program, and thank you to our RCs, because I know you're stepping up and taking on some additional responsibility for this grant. But we have a long list of students who are throughout the city in CPS schools that we are supposed to connect with, figure out a way to get a device that CPS has given to us, and then do some digital literacy training, make sure that they are also connected to internet, which is a partnership that Comcast has made with the city and CPS, and make sure that they really can be connected and have what they need to do e-learning. We haven't opened that up for broader publication in terms of recruiting, because we are not allowed to recruit clients for this. We were given a list of clients that we have to find. But that's also really exciting, because we're as concerned as everybody about our children falling behind, and we want to make sure that they've got every opportunity they can to participate in e-learning. Also, a few months ago now, and I don't think we ever talked about this, we got our first ever Head Start grant for the Skokie Morton Grove area. And we're going to be providing some early childhood services. It's a pretty small grant, but it's a step in the right direction and helping to build an early childhood collaborative up in that area. I believe there's 4 or 5 school districts that are coming together in communities. It'll be very similar for those who know some of the other suburban early childhood collaboratives that Metro has built in Addison and in Wheaton Warrenville. And then last, I wanted to share with you, so we have had a city early childhood program, I think since 1994 or 6, something like that. And a very successful program with 3 early learning centers, one up at North Center, one by the Midway office, and one at 53rd and Loomis, called Learning and Wellness. We've been a sub-grantee of the city of Chicago for this programming, and the city, because of some issues that happened with some of their sub-grantees, is being forced to recompete. That means that the Office of Head Start opens up all the funding that the city had and says anybody who wants to compete for this funding can compete. So we're currently meeting with our ECE leadership team in the city and with some of the leaders from the suburbs, and talking about what that might look like and what our application would be. We're really excited because we think there's some expansion we can do. We think there's some things we could do a little bit differently that we think might be better for our kids and families. So more to come on that. It's going to be a heavy lift and a lot of work for that team, but with lots and lots of opportunity. So we're super excited about that. So I think that's it, Rick. I'm going to turn it back to you. You're still muted.
You'd figure that after near half a year, I would figure out that I have to use the microphone, and you know, some people are just takes a little longer to learn. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was the racial justice, racial equity, inclusivity, and justice. REIJ. So we got to get the acronym because it's not the acronym that most people use. We added the J, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So I know that I want to address a couple of things. One, let me first tell you the things that you already know. One, we created a committee that is information and that has now met with Brian Johnson, who has been our outstanding and terrific lead for this initiative. His early team included Jessica Rose Wallace and Christy Carranza, but now it has a representation from all of our centers. And so that is now formed. And I sent Brian a note, I can't remember, it was a couple of days ago or maybe even yesterday. As you know, it's a long, long day these days. And I said, one of the things that I've been thinking, and I know it doesn't sound like a good practice, but I shared it with him anyway. I'm like, maybe we could do a socially distant gathering at my house on the backyard to just kick it off. And so Brian and I are going to noodle that with that group of people and see if it is worth the risk or not. Again, we would be socially distant with masks, but we would have an opportunity to see each other's eyes face to face and talk about the next steps for this committee. In addition to that, every center will have its own committee to move this work moving forward. There has been a document that has now been created. It's almost in final format now. We still call it a draft, but that essentially talks about this work moving forward and our commitments as an agency. I think some of you may think that we jumped on the bandwagon after the unfortunate murder. But no, I think what we're doing, in fact, is quite the opposite. I think we are, let me just kind of explain what that means. We've been working at this for a long time. So it didn't start with the murder of George Floyd. My family's walking in the door, so excuse them for a second. It didn't start for us with the murder of George Floyd. Certainly it brought it to even greater prominence and to light. And it created us to think more in a more focused way about it. But the work started much before that. What we have learned throughout this process, and I think Brian would be the first to say, is a couple of things. One, in some ways, we are way ahead of our peers. In some, not in every way, but in some ways we are way ahead of our peers. And you've heard me state the numbers already, but for me, it's important to repeat them. Of our more than 1,000 employees, 35% of them are African-American. I should say 35% of you are African-American, 35% of us are African-American, 35% of us are Latinx, 27% of us are white, and the remaining percentage represents the world, right? And we want to make sure that everybody is equally heard and seen and valued here at Metropolitan Family Services. And so for a big agency like MFS, that's a big deal. We are the most diverse big agency in the state, and I really would challenge any other big agency to say they are more diverse than, and to show us the numbers, because we could show anybody the numbers. Number two is I then go to the leadership. So who are our leaders at MFS? So if you include me in that group and all of our VPs and executive directors and top people here, there are 15 of us, right, that are on the leadership team. And 5 of us identify as Black African-American. 5 of us identify as white Americans. 4 of us as Latinx, and 1 of us is mixed race, Latinx and white. So we're almost equally divided in the thirds by the 3 major groups. Again, we may have some work to do to diversify further in terms of our other groups, but it's still, it's a pretty diverse leadership team as well. You've heard me acknowledge that we have some work to do on our board, and they've acknowledged it, and they're working on it actively. As we speak, they're working on it actively, and our Calumet board will hear from our board chair later on today, and that I suspect will be one of the questions that comes up for her. So, and I'm glad to say it's a her, and our board chair is a woman. So that's the first thing. Secondly, we realize, and again, Brian has realized that as he's gone out and spoken to consultants to help us do this work in a more formal way from our board all the way to our line staff, he is, I believe, and I don't want to speak for Brian, and he can speak for himself, that he has learned again that we are ahead of many of the organizations, again, acknowledging fully that we have more work to do. So that's where I'll start. What have we done, though, so far? So you heard me at the Calumet meeting, town hall, say that we were committed to giving our next big construction contract to a minority business. And I am really happy and proud to say that we have selected a African-American owned business to help us rebuild the Midway Center, which is the next big build that we're going to have. It's a multi-million-dollar investment. It comes almost exclusively from a capital grant. So I know one of the questions is, if they're going to spend $5 million on a building, why don't they just spend it on salary? Well, you know, I wish things would work out that way, but it's actually a capital grant that was given to us by the state of Illinois. And so we're going to use that money, and we're going to hire a Black-owned firm to do the work at Midway. Beyond that, there's a Latinx-owned firm that is going to do the smaller work at the Jones Center, Solis Construction, and it's a group that Ted has worked with in the past. And so Solis will likely get, I don't think we've committed yet, the much smaller work at the Jones Center. Beyond that, on the IT side, I'm also happy to say that Ben Suman has found a minority-owned vendor who will provide us with the next generation of Dell laptops and computers that we will use in the agency moving forward. So just to give you a sense of what we have been doing since we made that commitment. And that's not to say that we have never used minority vendors. We have always used minority vendors, certainly in my time, and I would bet in all of your careers here at MFS, we've always used minority vendors. The only thing that we did recently is up the ante, saying we're going to use them almost, almost exclusively. I mean, we're not going to, be silly and not consider great contracts from all over, but we're going to make a targeted effort to be even more bold and give our biggest grants to minority-owned companies. So again, happy to announce that BOA Construction, a Black-owned firm, will lead the work at the Midway site. And there will be other work that comes later. So that's a start for us. Again, when we hire consultants in other areas, because as you know, we will hire consultants from time to time to inform us or give us expertise on whether it's, you name it, some kind of Medicaid-related issue or technology-related issue. We will hire consultants from time to time when we don't have the expertise. That will be a consideration as well. So it's not only about construction, it's about services. And there are professionals of every ethnicity that can do this work. So actually it brings me to on one other technology issue. Ben has worked really hard to create a plan to put a data center, not in the downtown space, but out in one of our community spaces. And so that plan is now almost complete. And one of his advisors is also an African-American technology expert. So just to give you a sense of what we are doing already. What comes next under Brian and the committee's leadership is we're going to have a series of facilitated conversations with agreements that they're always going to be respectful, but they're going to be honest, and some of them are going to be hard. We're going to coordinate them across the agency, again, from the board level to every level, and you'll learn a lot more about that real soon. So there's lots going on. Sometimes I can be accused of maybe doing work, but not communicating the work. And some of the work I'm not even doing, it's other great people are doing the work, but it's happening, right? And we just need to sometimes do a better job of communicating it. So that, I guess, concludes our real formal part of the presentation. I would want to read some of your questions and try to answer them as to the best of my ability, and wherever I go wrong, Theresa can pick me up and we'll answer the questions. Let me first ask Christy if any additional questions have come up, and how will you send them to me? Because I could read down the long list you already provided me, but I want to know how we will address other questions. No questions right now in the chat box is what Christy is saying. And she will send me questions via the chat box. So let me just go through some of the questions we already have. And when I don't know the answer, I'll punt and look over at Theresa and let her answer this question. So first question that was asked is, will MFS close offices in the fall and or winter if there is a surge in COVID cases in Chicago? Well, if there's a surge, big surge, yes, we will close the offices in downtown and in the burbs and across the agency. If the governor mayor give an order, we're going to follow it and close the offices. There's no doubt about that. So that's the easiest one for me to answer. I know there may be follow-up, so I'll look at the chat box. Here's the next question. Seeing as how we are able to work remotely, would MFS take the initiative and allow most employees to work from home in order to continue to cut budget expenses for offices once COVID is under control? Or will we be coming back to the office? Well, that's a great question, and thank you for asking that question. Number one, I hope that we get COVID under control and come back to the office. That would be a happy day for all of us in the country and, quite frankly, around the world. We don't know when that's going to happen, but until that happens, we want you to work in this hybrid model where some of us are at the office some days and some of us are at home some days, and some of us are always at the office or at our place of work, and some of us are mostly at home. So we will continue with that hybrid model, but what doesn't change is that we need to do the work. Now, but here's the part of the question that I find really, really intriguing, because what I just said, we're already doing. But your question is really about the future. So it says, in order to continue to cut budget expenses for offices once COVID is under control, will we be coming back or will we be allowed to work from home? We think that in the future, what we have learned through this COVID-19 pandemic is that we can work from home. We finally figured that out. And we certainly, I alluded to the next generation of Dell technology that we're going to get, that Ben and his team is looking at. Well, we're going to have to put better technology in people's desks and living room tables and wherever it is that you work on your kitchen countertops in order to have you work from home. So that's one part of the equation. Another part, you heard me say, we need a data center that works well. We can't trust it downtown, not that it's not stable, but from time to time we have to move from the downtown offices because of the expensive rents, which you alluded to in your question as well. This time we want to put that data center someplace where we don't have to move it if we have to move our downtown offices. So that data center will be coming to a center near you, maybe where you work today. So the answer is yes. In the future, there will be more opportunities to work from home. There's going to be more opportunities to have hybrid models of work where you will work from your office, you will work from your kitchen, you will work from a library, you will work in different places. So in the future, you could certainly plan on that being a reality. Certainly at downtown, that is an active conversation now. We anticipate having a much smaller GO in the future, which means by definition that we will have to share offices, that we will have to sign offices out, that we will have to have spaces where lawyers could see clients and other people could see clients, but they're not necessarily their offices. So there will be a new way of working moving forward. I think that is one of the silver linings, that we think we could save a little money in the future, and it's money that we can use to fulfill the mission of this organization and to pay for people's salaries. It's going to take us a little while to get there because we are signed on to this lease here downtown through the end of the fiscal year. But by that means June 30th. So by June 30th, we need to be somewhere else. And it's going to be somewhere smaller. That I guarantee you, which means you'll see me working from my wife's office / art room some of the time, and some of the time from a place downtown that'll likely have an office that's a little smaller than what I have now, and it's okay with me. And I think you should prepare yourself at the centers, and I think this is where your question was coming from, to work from home and in different ways. But we also want to make sure that the culture of this agency remains strong, that you feel connected to MFS, that you have a place where you could have a picture of your child or your partner or something dear to you. But it may not be a place where you always drop things off. But again, more to come. We haven't made any definitive answers or decisions on that, I'm sorry. But yes, is your question. That's a long-winded answer to your question, but I hope that helps. And I will look at the chat box to see if there's follow-up questions there. Let me take a look. Yep, I'll get to that one. Let me just go to a few more questions. I may throw some at Theresa just to have her answer while I drink some water. How are we doing financially and otherwise as an agency? Are we looking at closure of sites or dropping programs due to COVID-19? What budgetary challenges are we facing? Well, that's a bunch of questions all in one. How are we doing financially? You know, I forget which American president said, could somebody find me a one-handed economist? And let me explain what that means. And what it means to me is that I'll give you the economist response. And it's on the one hand, we'll have one sort of response, and I'll tell you in a second. On the one hand, we're strong, right? We certainly compared, if you compare us to our colleagues in the field, we're pretty solid. If you compare us to ourselves last year, we are running a deficit, right? It's not yet a huge deficit, but we're running a deficit. So again, on the one hand, we're solid. I mean, the perception is we're strong. We certainly have a better bottom line than most of the other nonprofits in the country, I would say. On the other hand, compared to MFS of fiscal year 2020 or MFS fiscal year 2019, we are running a deficit. So that's the first part. You could, you know, I wish I could give you clearer answers, but if you ask me to how I project into the future, I think the future is bright for us. It's not going to come without pain, but I think it's bright. The second part of your question, are we looking at closures of sites or dropping programs? No, we're not looking at closure of sites. I don't foresee closing any sites unless there's some huge major cuts that we are not aware of. Obviously, we'd have to react to that if that would happen. But are we thinking of dropping programs due to COVID-19? No, we're not. Would we drop programs? We drop programs all the time. I think you know that. Some programs run their course. and other programs come in to replace them. So we do that almost every single year. So if we were to drop the program, it probably wouldn't be because of COVID-19. What budgetary challenges are we facing? Well, I alluded to it earlier. We are running a deficit. We need to make certain that in programs that are fee for service that we're able to bill, and that I wrote in my last communication to you, and I realize it's been 2 weeks now, that we need to keep doing the work. We need to keep seeing clients. And then it's not even enough to do that. We need to make sure that we document properly that we have seen the clients, because if you don't document it, it didn't happen. So that's, again, long-winded answer to one question. And I don't know, Theresa, you want to take any of these other ones? I can keep going, or I could drink a little water.
You can go ahead and drink a little water. Before I take, I could take a couple on the chat box, but before I do that, I want to go back to the question about once COVID is over, could we work from home? And I agree with everything that Rick said. I do want to point out, though, that we have a fair portion of our staff who don't have the ability to work from home because of the services that they provide. And they have been working in person since day one. That would include our street outreach folks and our folks in CP4P. It would include our SILAs. It would include our mobile crisis response team. And certainly, while we did some remote work and some of our other programs like adult protective services and early childhood, those are back in person for the most part. And that's certainly the expectation of our funders. So I just want to be really sensitive to the fact that we have a lot of different positions in our organization, administrative, department positions, different programs. And so some folks, because of their position, have the ability to work in a hybrid model or work from home, and other folks never will. And thank you to our folks in those programs who have from the very beginning never worked from home and have been here, and in some situations continue to be here, both potentially exposed to the virus and really dealing with some of the violence in the city. So thank you for all of you who are so dedicated and doing that. In terms of hiring clinicians, so I just want to address that. It fits a little bit with what Rick said earlier about those of you who are doing what needs to be done in your jobs. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Continue to do that. And those who are working toward that, continue to work toward that. We have certain deliverables on contracts, and we have certain productivity requirements that really are driven by our finances. In the world where we have the most clinicians, that would be behavioral health across a number of all of our centers and a number of different programs. We don't want any clinician to be so overworked and stressed out that it's not good for your health. It's not good for the service you're going to provide to clients. It's one of the reasons we set our productivity levels where we did. Most of our colleagues in other agencies are about 3 to 5 hours a week higher than we are. So when we get to our highest mark in January, that'll be 24 hours a week. Most of the organizations I've talked to are between 28 and 30 hours a week with the same documentation and all of that stuff that we have to do. So it is certainly not our desire to overwork any of you, but we do have a lot of capacity still, because we have a number of folks who are not at their productivity level. We really, for finances to work and for us to keep you all employed and serving the clients you want to serve, we need everybody at their productivity level, sustaining that. And then of course, we're going to bring in more clinicians. We're not going to ask you to be doing 30 hours a week every week of direct service because that is not sustainable. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. And as Rick said, we are always looking for licensed clinicians in particular. Again, not because of Metro, but because of outside factors and how things are reimbursed. We are in desperate need of LCSWs and always looking to hire them because we have a fair portion of our revenue that comes from Medicare and only LCSWs can bill Medicare. So it's kind of a mixed bag. In some centers, we've added clinicians, and in other centers, we still need those clinicians to get their productivity up before we're going to have the finances to add other clinicians. And in terms of PPE, thank you for asking that. We better start quickly to think about having to put PPE over coats. So yeah, we'll absolutely work on that. And I think this certainly is the case for our early childhood staff who are going and getting children to bring into the centers, and for all of our home and community-based staff who are having to still go into clients' homes and into hospitals and places like that. So we will absolutely make sure you have the PPE that fits over your coats. Thank you for reminding us. You want to take the next, or you want me to continue, Rick?
Let's see. Why don't you take the next one, and I could just jump in after that one.
So the next one was about layoffs, but we've really addressed that. Then there's one about, can we as individuals or as a team, what can we do to assist in any capacity to help the agency survive this pandemic? I think we've addressed that too. Yeah. Just keep doing the great work you're doing and make sure that we're meeting the expectations of our funders. Let's see. Will it seriously be considered for MFS to look at diversifying their levels of services programs in light of the changes that are happening, will be happening due to COVID and the aftermath of COVID once we get back to quote unquote normal? I'm thinking in particular of behavioral health in terms of clinicians level or clients level of acuity. And there is just much more needed than therapy to be considering more case management. Yeah, as well as backup for medication only services. So I smile and say yes, because there's actually a grant out right now that we're very close to submitting. And we have written in, now, unfortunately, this grant right now only funds the city of Chicago geography, but we have written in case managers for each one of our city centers because we do recognize that every year it seems our clients' lives are more complicated, the situations are more serious, and it is, we are not, come to the office, see us for an hour, feel better, go home kind of clinicians. We have a lot of stuff we have to deal with. And so we recognize that there really is a need to build in some more case management and kind of case coordination. So we're looking for opportunities to fund that. And everyone cross your fingers or do whatever you do, rub your rabbit foot, whatever. And hopefully this grant will get funded and it will allow us to add some case management to all of our city centers. And we'll continue to look for that. The only other thing I'll say about that is we are part of a consortium of agencies that does some case management for those in behavioral health. It's the IHPA. The IHPA has just successfully negotiated one and almost signing on to two contracts with managed care companies that would allow us to do more of this case management. And the state's going to be reimbursing for that at an even more aggressive level come January. So we're all right behind you. You're thinking the same way that we are. So thank you for that. Want me to take the telehealth?
Yeah.
Okay.
Take it from there.
So thoughts on the structure of continuation of telehealth services upon getting back to normal. In some areas, it's proving to be beneficial. Yes, we intend to continue with telehealth. We've participated in some national conversations related to this. We've been doing some advocacy because of COVID. They relaxed some of the rules and laws around billing and how you can deliver telehealth. We've been advocating that those continue after COVID is over. We intend to continue to do some remote telehealth for folks. The estimation across the country is that somewhere between 50 and 60% of behavioral health services might continue to be delivered by telehealth once the pandemic is over. We have some more needs technologically to help this work even better for us. And we do know some of our clinicians are finding this to be much more engaging for their clients. Some clients are liking this better. We also, in the next couple of weeks, will be doing a client survey specifically to look at how they've liked remote services. So not just for behavioral health, we're doing remote services and some school stuff, in workforce, in domestic violence. So we're going to be surveying our clients to find out, how has this gone for you? What could we do better? What have you liked? What haven't you liked? So it's definitely on the radar. Thanks for that question.
Okay, here's the next. I want to address something before I move on to the next question, because I typed something in the chat box and I realized that you probably can't see the response in the chat box. And it was essentially, I know Theresa just addressed it, but yes, we are desperately looking for clinicians and MSWs, and we will hire. I further asked you to refer, because good employees tend to hang out with good clinicians, and good, their friends tend to be also of high quality. So we certainly want you to refer people to work here and to help us meet the mission, and also take some of the stress off of your shoulders. If we could just bring more people here to do the clinical work, we again desperately need it. Reiterate also what Theresa said, and we need others who maybe aren't putting in all the hours to put in those hours to help our colleagues. So let me just go to the next question. It says, considering all the current issues we are facing, what plans, if any, are being made to support the company for future successes? So first thing, so this question touched on one of my pet peeves, and it's to call us a company. We technically are a corporation, a nonprofit corporation, but I prefer if we call it an agency, community-based organization, if you will, but an agency rather than a company. But that's just me. We are constantly planning. We just launched our new strategic plan. We will certainly be making that. You filled out surveys on your strategic plan. You had focus groups for the strategic plan. We will share that with you, the final that was approved by the board. There's a executive document that will show you, and again, hopefully engage you as much as possible. This has been a difficult time in terms of being able to see you face to face and communicate face to face, but we will have a session, maybe using this kind of medium, to just go over the strategic plan so that you could understand how that thinks about the future of the agency. Certainly we are continuing to make plans to set us up for success beyond just the strategic plan, because with all plans, they're limited. So there are many other things that could be done. There's some questions that are asked here in terms of, you asked earlier, what are the kinds of things that we can do to support the agency? Among them, and would be to make certain that your elected officials know of the great work that you do and the great work that you're doing at MFS. So whether you live in the suburbs or you live in the city, whether you have an alderman or a state rep or a state senator, whomever, county representative, commissioner, let them know of the great work that's being done by you and your colleagues at MFS. That would be very helpful. We can provide you with talking points if you need them, and I suspect you would, about the work that we're doing on that behalf. So that's another way that you could help us. But the biggest way in terms of planning is planning to be able to get you the tools that you could do your jobs, whether it's at the office or on your kitchen counter or wherever it is that you do your work. So yes, we are planning towards that. what can employees do to support the long-term growth of the agency? Thank you for calling it an agency. I think we've gone through much of that already. What upcoming projects is the agency participating in at this time or considering for the near future? I think Theresa went through a lot of those. The big, huge one is the Head Start Recompete. There are other big ones as well, but that's probably the most prominent one right now, not to diminish all the great work that's going on everywhere else, because there is. We're doing work as contact tracing, we're doing census work, we're doing the piece of work, we're doing all the work that you do on clinical work in SILA and senior protection. All of that is equally important, but the contract change that's going to be most significant for us is that Head Start one. So that's why we brought that up. The next one, and it's the last of the written ones I have, and we only have a little bit of time left, and it says that many staff are feeling underappreciated and undervalued. How can we support staff morale? So, you know, when people make statements like that, number one, I want to say, I don't know what many staff means. So I usually think that when people want to say, I feel underappreciated and undervalued, and it's okay to say that. And I think that you should feel safe in saying that to me, to Theresa, to your executive director, your supervisor. If you're feeling that way, you should let us know. You should feel safe doing that. In terms of, please know that we are greatly appreciate the work that you're doing, and some of you are doing heroic work by being out at night in all kinds of neighborhoods, doing the toughest work in hospitals, in homes. So we certainly appreciate you. I'll speak for myself. I really appreciate you, and I think you bring great value to this organization. So I just want to make sure that you hear it from me, that I know the work that you're doing, and I do value it. How can we show that value more? I think that what we've been focused on, and again, it could be a result of that you have a CEO that is not always the best communicator. It could also be a result of a CEO that is hyper-focused on making sure that we can pay the bills and that we can pay the salaries. So that is my way of showing how much we appreciate you, to make certain that you get a check every 2 weeks and that your family doesn't have to fear for not getting it. I know that's not enough, and I know that's not what you're talking about. So I want to tell you that I do appreciate you. We have tried other things, including you know, the different centers, including GO, have monthly sessions, and we just to see each other and talk and tell each other that we appreciate each other, and that we know that some of us have new hairdos and haven't shaved for a long time or haven't been able to. So just trying to keep it light. We've also tried to provide yoga, and we try to provide meditation services for people. I know that not everybody takes advantage of it, or not everybody can, so we're doing the best we can. With that, our time is almost up, and I apologize, but that's the way this works. The town hall goes for an hour, and then we end, and then we get off of this and we go to Southeast and try to talk about the concerns and opportunities of Southeast for the next session. And again, we'll get to every center in this way. And so thank you again for your attention. Thank you for your questions. And whatever we didn't answer, rest assured that we will get it answered.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.